Hello again everyone, and welcome back to my channel. We continue our exploration of the American and Soviet space programs. As per our established tradition, to better understand and evaluate the American Gemini program, we compare it with Soviet achievements of the same period. After the conclusion of the Vostok program, the Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev continued to demand new space records. To achieve these, the Voskhod program was prepared in extreme haste and even with some resistance from individual engineers, as much as was possible in those years. The Voskhod program aimed to accomplish a multi-person crew mission, a spacewalk, the rendezvous of two spacecraft in orbit, the docking of two spacecraft using a tether and rotation around a common center of mass to create artificial gravity, an all-female crew mission, and even a surgical operation in zero gravity on a rabbit. Let's remember this list, because most of it, in the same sequence, was accomplished by the Americans in the Project Gemini. For a flight with a crew of 3, a new spacecraft was needed. However, there was no time to design a new spacecraft, so it was decided to use the existing Vostok spacecraft. To fit 3 seats, firstly, they abandoned the ejection seat, and secondly, it was decided to send the crew into space without spacesuits. This deprived the crew of the chance to survive in any emergency situation, whether it was a launch vehicle failure at launch, as the emergency escape system appeared only with the Soyuz, or a failure to deploy the parachutes correctly during landing. However, despite such a colossal risk, there were plenty of willing hands to participate in this mission. It was decided to equip the spacecraft with retrorocket package for soft landing. The retrorocket would activate automatically when a special 1-meter-long probe touched the ground. Additionally, a new parachute system, more reliable than that of the Vostok spacecraft, was developed to enhance safety. For the spacewalk, a special inflatable airlock weighing 250 kilograms was developed, which would inflate and then, after the spacewalk was completed, be discarded from the spacecraft. This airlock allowed the spacecraft to remain pressurized with a normal atmosphere, unlike the American Gemini spacecraft. All these changes led to an increase in the spacecraft's mass by more than 600 kilograms, pushing it over 5.5 tons. This, in turn, required a new launch vehicle. The 11A-57 rocket from the already familiar R-7 family was used, but with a more powerful third stage. The rocket's liftoff mass increased to almost 300 tons, and the payload it could deliver to low Earth orbit now reached 5,900 kilograms. The last unmanned test flight took place on October 6, 1964. The mission lasted more than a day and was successful. The spacecraft was designated Cosmos 47, and less than a week after this successful mission, on October 12 of the same year, the Voskhod 1 spacecraft was launched with 3 cosmonauts on board: Vladimir Komarov, Konstantin Feoktistov, and Boris Yegorov. This mission also lasted just over a day, although the cosmonauts insisted on staying in orbit for another day. However, during this flight, Khrushchev was deposed, and the engineers decided not to risk the crew's lives for the sake of setting new records. Furthermore, if the retrorocket failed, the Vostok spacecraft could remain in orbit for about 10 days, meaning the reserves of air, water, and food would last for 10 days, after which its orbit would decay and it would re-enter the atmosphere on its own. In contrast, the Voskhod spacecraft with its 3-member crew could stay in space for no more than 3 days. Therefore, it was decided to activate the retro-rocket and begin re-entry. The landing was successful. The cosmonauts landed in normal mode. The retro-rocket package and the new parachute system worked as intended. Everything ended well. Consequently, the following year, on March 18, 1965, the Voskhod 2 spacecraft was launched with cosmonauts Pavel Belyayev and Alexei Leonov on board. During this flight, Alexei Leonov made the first human spacewalk. The spacewalk lasted 16 minutes. During this time, Leonov's spacesuit inflated in the vacuum, causing him problems when re-entering the airlock. He had to enter headfirst, contrary to the instructions. Inside the airlock, he had to turn around to enter the spacecraft feet first. Nevertheless, he managed to do it. However, during his spacewalk, a pressure sensor somehow activated, and the partial pressure of oxygen inside the spacecraft began to rise. The sensor had apparently detected a false cabin depressurization and started pumping oxygen. After some time, the emergency valve released the excess pressure, preventing a potential fire. Whether the hatch was not properly sealed or something else happened, it eventually settled in place, normalizing the pressure, and the cosmonauts began their re-entry. However, as I mentioned, the program was prepared in great haste, which resulted in the seats being installed at a 90-degree angle to the control panel. Therefore, the spacecraft commander, Pavel Belyayev, sitting strapped in his seat, could not reach the control panel. To activate the retro rockets, he had to get out of his seat, perform all the preparatory operations, then return to his seat, strap in, which took him 22 seconds, and only then activate the braking system to deorbit and land the capsule. Without being strapped in, the retro rockets could not be activated because the shifted center of gravity could cause the spacecraft to spin out of control. These 22 seconds spent on strapping in caused the spacecraft to deviate from the calculated landing point by 170 kilometers and land in the remote Perm taiga. It was found after 4 hours by the orange parachute canopy, but there was no radio contact with the crew for over a day. An axe, food, and warm clothing were dropped by helicopter, although they couldn't find fur-flying boots in the deep snow. They had to spend the first night in the thoroughly frozen capsule of the re-entry module. They cut out the inner foil thermal insulation, wrapped themselves in it and pieces of the parachute, and spent the night that way. The next day, a rescue team reached them. They built a small log cabin where the cosmonauts could wash with hot water, and they spent the second night in the log cabin. Only on the third day, after skiing more than 5 kilometers, did they reach a helicopter that evacuated them to the mainland. Evacuating cosmonauts using a hovering helicopter with the help of slings, baskets, chairs, etc., was strictly prohibited in the Soviet Union. However, Soviet engineers somehow benevolently viewed such manipulations with American astronauts. By the way, this non-standard semi-emergency landing gave a powerful impetus to the development of emergency rescue systems. A load of special equipment was developed that could navigate forests and swamps. A whole host of specialists and special equipment was prepared, and more. After this and after Khrushchev's removal, the Voskhod program was practically closed. Specialists completely switched to the lunar program and the development of Soyuz spacecraft. Only a year later, around February 22, 1966, another launch was conducted. The spacecraft was designated Cosmos 110. It carried 2 dogs, Ugoyak and Veterok, who spent 22 days in space. This mission set a new record for the longest flight of living creatures. This record-breaking duration was not surpassed by humans until 1971, when it was achieved by the crew of the Soyuz 11 consisting of Dobrovolsky, Volkov, and Patsayev. As for non-human living beings, it still stands as the longest spaceflight to this day. The dogs spent more than 3 weeks in something akin to diapers, meaning they spent the entire flight in their own waste. As a result, they lost fur and developed sores on their bodies. However, after a successful landing, they were treated. They left behind healthy offspring and lived for almost 12 years. With this, the Voskhod program was closed. Planned Voskhod missions 3 through 7 were cancelled. In the next episode, we will examine the absolutely heroic and fantastic U.S. Project Gemini. That's all for today. Goodbye everyone. See you soon.